Off with a lot of reaction to what happened yesterday in Uganda. The president there signed into law one of the toughest anti-gay laws anywhere in the world. A law that includes life sentences for people accused of homosexuality.
That's right. And I think it took a while for the web to react, but for the last 24 hours, really, it has been a huge amount of reaction. Petitions have been set up in a lot of countries trying to, mobilise reaction and to this. So let's take a look at some of what we're seeing online. Uganda, the facts on the extreme anti-gay law. That's just one petition by allout.org. So not surprisingly, LGBT associations mobilising on that. That's at about 246,000 signatures so far. Also, you've got countries that have, if I can pull up the right page here, that have the first countries to cut aid to the Ugandan government over this anti-gay law. The Netherlands, Denmark, Norway. So all pretty...
And the United States have said they're thinking about doing so as well.
That's right. So up to that point, you would say pretty predictable. Of course, there will be a backlash against such a repressive law. But perhaps more surprisingly, things that we weren't expecting to see in the news today, a tabloid in Uganda outing the top 200 homosexuals. That was printed the day after that anti-gay law was signed, as in today.
These people now risk prison.
Well, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's essentially what...
Let alone violent assault.
That's right. Red Pepper is the name of the publication, and they are essentially playing into the hands of any hatred that surrounds this bill, and it is indeed being called a witch hunt by some online. I think it's a pretty accurate description of it. This tweet from South Africa is pretty interesting. We as South Africans know very well the scars left by oppression. Let's not sit idly by as it happens to innocent people in Uganda. Now, an interesting point here, Laura, a similar incident happened going back to 2010. Now, at that point, there was a newspaper called Rolling Stone, not the famous magazine. This is a Ugandan newspaper that published 100 pictures of Uganda's top homosexuals. Now, as a result of that, one of the most prominent and outspoken homosexuals in Uganda was killed less than 2 months later.
I remember that, yeah.
David Kato. Now, a movie was actually made about his life, Call Me Kuchu, that has had quite a degree of success. So the spotlight has been placed on issues such as this before, but it's extraordinary given that what happened to David Kato, consequent to his photo being put up in that newspaper in Uganda, that another publication would do the same thing. Now, speaking of documentaries, Call Me Kuchu being one well worth paying attention to, another one is being I suppose, the spotlight is being put on it today in the media, because where is all of this homophobic reaction coming from in Africa? Partly, some people are saying it is to do with American evangelicals, and this particular documentary, which we're about to take a look at an extract of, called God Loves Uganda, puts the spotlight on just that. Let's take a look.
You're called to be a missionary people. I believe the Lord is calling me to pray for a great missionary force. America's not yet done sending her sons and daughters to bring the gospel to the nations.
Homosexuality does not benefit the society.
It's sin.
Are you ready for Jesus?
We do not fight sodomy because of who they are, but what they do.
The controversial bill proposed death sentence for homosexuality.
The law says no homosexuality in this nation. It's an abomination to God.
The Americans, when they preach hate here, they forget that they are preaching to people who will just take the law into their hands.
Pretty hard-hitting stuff there.
That's right. So some people looking at the broader issues behind that law that's signed today, and what's leading to this sort of a regressive tendency in countries like Uganda.
All right. Now let's move on to what is every politician's nightmare, especially German politicians, I have to say. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is in Israel today. She's been meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A very unfortunate photograph has come out.
That's right. He's been called an extremely talented shadow maker, Mr. Netanyahu, and it's been called the most uncomfortable photo in the world. Now, this was at a joint press conference between Angela Merkel and Benjamin Netanyahu, and a photographer for the Jerusalem Post snapped. I'm sure he was delighted when he saw it. Mark Israel Salem. He clearly didn't intend to get the most incredibly uncomfortable photo in the world. You can see here that Mr. Netanyahu's figure is rather unfortunately, for the very nice Angela Merkel, casting a shadow on her face that resembles the moustache of a far less reputed German leader, Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
Now, the headlines are great here. It's been called the awkward case of the shadow moustache by The Independent. Haaretz, the left-leaning Israeli daily, is quoting Goethe the German philosopher. Where there is much light, the shadows are deepest. I'm not sure we should really unpack that Goethe quote too much.
It's gone absolutely wild on Twitter today.
It has indeed,
hasn't it?
and indeed the Washington Post there going with that headline, the most uncomfortable photo in the world. Some people are getting very creative online. Here is Mr. Netanyahu casting the shadow of a deer's head. So there you go. But in any case, the Jerusalem Post is not going to run with the photo. They're worried that it could offend. So it does appear that it will just be a viral photo online, but the print edition won't run with it. The top editors are a little bit concerned about causing offence.
It reminds me of when the UKIP leader Nigel Farage went on a television interview, and there was a bit of pixelation. Gave him a similar look.
It's also in an episode of Father Ted for anyone who watches Father Ted.
All
good
right.
old comic.
Very unfortunate. You've got to feel sorry for the German Chancellor. That was pretty.
That's right. They probably have a laugh about it.
Yeah, you would think so. All right, James, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Laura.
That's it from Media Watch. Now, moving to our focus report, and we're heading